So this was what we had started yesterday. The issue that we're dealing with is a woman who is making her own income, and she wants to be able to be in charge of tithing her own income and choosing which tzedakah she wants to give to. So what we've seen so far from this tshuva is that there are two ways of looking at a woman's independent income. One is that the husband is immediately the acquirer, is the owner of her income, and it's really basically his money. It's her ma'aseh yadeha, it's her handiwork. And the other way of looking at it, this is what we had seen from the Tshuva Samaharik, is that it's called nichse milug, which means the husband has control over the money, but it's still her money, which in either event would require her to consult at least with her husband before she makes any decisions. Okay, now, we're up to over here. He says, Ulam beveis meir, nokat, sharak avodot shederech kol hanashim lasos, kimo litavot v'le'erog hein bichlal ma'aseh yadeha. He says, now we're going to throw a wrench into this. He says, in the Sefer Beis Meir, he writes that only work that women normally do domestically is included in what the Chachamim award to the husband and say that the husband has control over, such as weaving and sewing. Those are included in Ma'aseh Yadeha. And the husband has a right to compel his wife to do those types of domestic work and benefit from them, and they belong to him. Aval sha'ar avodos, but let's say a woman is involved in other kinds of work outside of the home that are not domestically focused, meaning that it's not for the direct needs of the household. Even if it's a type of work that women typically do in that country, such as a mazkira is a secretary, I think, and a mazkira, is that a secretary? Yeah, I think so. Now, what does hora'ah mean? Trying to figure out what hora'ah means. Yeah, I think it may be an educator, yeah. Einan bichlal ma'aseh yadeha. So that's not considered to be included in handiwork that the husband is entitled to. Ve'ein balo yachol lachuvosa la'avod bahen. And a husband has no right to compel his wife to go out and get work and to bring home income that he now is the owner of. And it sounds like that's all gravy that does not belong to the husband. The Gemara talks about what if a woman really pushes herself and produces more ma'aseh yadeha than is needed by the household. She works overtime and she produces more things than the household needs. The Gemara says that a woman is allowed to keep for herself. And therefore, it would seem that is something that does not belong to the husband. And in the footnote, he says, Yesh la'ayin b'divrei habeis meir. We should really look into this idea. And I'm not sure whether we're going to go through this whole thing. He says, Shala'achar shehevius shuvas harashva, she'ein habal yachol l'chayiv ishto lavod ba'avodos de'inon miyuchados l'nashim. After he quotes or cites this idea that a husband does not have the right to coerce his wife to work in those areas that are not that are not specific to women, kosa v'zel lashona. V'das harashba she'eno medama laha adafa shleidei hadachak tzorach in l'fumriata umimasha. Okay, he's going through some of the technical aspects of the tshuva, which we're not going to get into now. So therefore, his point is. So we'll go to the next page. He says, "V'habach kosav shehaminoghu she'ein motziim ha'adafa al yedei hadachak me'ha'isha." He says, the Bach says that our custom is that when a woman works overtime and produces more than the needs of the household, we don't take that away from her. The chamahu posku, sorry, I'm trying to remember what that abbreviation is. The Habe Shmuel. And the Beis Shmuel, though, adds that that's still considered nichse milug that the husband can control. According to this, even if it's considered to be her money, the husband still controls it, and therefore she wouldn't be allowed to tithe it without her husband's consult. The imhi omeres shezeh meiser mimaskora shala below kibla rishus baila ef shala kabel mimena. And therefore, if a woman tells the fundraiser, this is my tithe. Let's say she pulls out her $20 and gives it to the. That's not right. She pulls out $100 and she gives it to the shliach mitzvah. The guy might have to say to himself, Madam, with all due respect, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to accept this. Does your husband know that you're giving this sizable gift? And if her response is, oh, well, this is from my work. I'm giving Meiser from my money. That would still be a problem, according to all of the opinions that we've seen, because the husband still has a controlling share. Umeidach gisa, baila yachalases Meiser mehaperos lolo haskamasa, aval ein lo lases meiser mehakeren. And on the other hand, the husband has independent rights of, let's say, taking dividends from her income. So let's say if it's in a interest-bearing account, and the husband wants to take the interest that is born from her income and give that away to tzedakah or do with it whatever he wants, he has every right to do so without consulting her. So if they want to give anything from the Karen, from the principal of her paycheck, so then it has to be a joint agreement between the two of them. But if he wants to take anything that's earned from her income, so then he can do that by himself. Okay, so it turns out, in all of these scenarios that we've seen so far, the husband still has a controlling share. And then he says, "Uvemishnal amelech kasav shafilu nomar shenoshim shaobdos ba'asakim umafarnasos is ba'alehan einun bichlal ma'aseh yadeha." He says the Mishnah Lamelech deliberates over the following. He says that if women work in industry and they're the main breadwinner, right? So then you can't look at her income as ma'aseh yadeha, as her handiwork that the husband has control over, because that only works when there's a relation, when the husband is an earner as well. So that's the Mishnah Lamelech Shita, that you only look at a woman's handiwork as ma'aseh yadeha, that the husband has rights to when he's providing parnasa to the family. But if he's not providing parnasa to the family and she's the earner, so then you don't look at her income as ma'aseh yadeha, but rather it's her money. But b'chol zos avi bichlal mitziasa l'fi harama mitziasa la'atzma im eina nizonas mibayla. He says, but it's considered to be things that she acquires independently of her husband, like a mitzia, like if she finds a lost object, that belongs to her, only if her husband is not sustaining her. So in general, things that a woman acquires financially, if she acquires financial objects of value, normally she has to relinquish those to her husband. But if her husband is not providing parnasa, then she's allowed to keep those things for herself. And the Pischei Tshuva writes that every woman can say, that's how I paskin. So in a situation where a guy's not earning money or not earning enough to be able to support the family, and so the wife has to work in order to be able to, and this is a very common phenomenon, at least it used to be. I don't know if it still is as much, but I think it still is. That the guy the woman says, I want to work, I want to provide for you so you can learn, and that's really what the arrangement they have between the two of them. So that's fine. So she goes out to work, but she can say, I paskin like the Rama, that I'm in charge of the money, and therefore I can choose to tithe. But he says, "V'hadvarim amurim legabe isha shemefarneses bala ve'enu nizonis klal mi bala." He says, but that's only when a woman is not getting any parnasa from her husband, and she's the breadwinner. Ulam legabe shar nashim she'ovdos v'chein legabe nashim bizmanenu. He says, but other types of situations where both the husband and the wife are earning money, which would apply to most situations in our times. Afilu nomar sherivachim shalahem ein bichlal mitziyasa mikol makom lekuli alma havi hakol lebalehem. But even if you would say that that's not called ma'aseh yadeha because it's outside the purview of domestic kinds of things, but nonetheless, it's considered to be items that she finds, that she acquires, that are of financial value, but those she would have to relinquish to her husband. Since a woman is getting some level of financial support from her husband's work. And therefore, what kicks back in is the halachic rule that anything a woman acquires over the course of the marriage, she has to relinquish to her husband. And therefore, once again, the meiser sort of imposition of taking meiser is on the husband from his wife's income. And to go into this further, I refer you to that tshuva from the Sefer Rav Pi'ilim. Yes, so that's sort of. Let me just finish by saying that that's sort of the end of the tshuva. The end of the tshuva, bottom line, is that in most situations where both the husband and wife are earning an income, the woman is not in charge of tithing. It's either the husband has exclusive rights to that money. Any money that she earns is immediately belongs to the husband, and therefore she has no independent right of choosing to whom she should give the tzedakah to, or it's a joint decision that the both of them have to make together. But she doesn't have rights to decide on her own. And therefore, the only exception to that would be when she is the exclusive earner and she's not getting any parnasa from her husband at all. So in that situation, she can say, I paskin like a certain shita that says that all of this income that I earn belongs to me. I get the right to choose how to spend it. And provide for my family, and therefore I am in charge of giving meiser. But that would be more of the exception than the rule. Go ahead, Ron. Well, that's what I just got through saying. Okay, so the first opinion that we saw is that it's the husband's obligation of meiser because the money is his. The second opinion is that the money belongs to them jointly, whatever she earns, and therefore the two of them have to decide together how they're going to give that money as meiser. the word household has no halachic meaning, right? In other words, that's that might be a legalistic term in secular law, but a mitzvah is incumbent upon an individual human being. It's not incumbent upon a household. The only time we have this mitzvah on a household is by Hanukkah candles.
Has no mitzvah place.
If a man's not making money, yeah, if you have no money, you have no mitzvah of tithing what you don't have. Yeah, right. But we did see, if you recall, that even poor people have a mitzvah of tzedakah. So whatever you acquire through tzedakah, you should give a small amount to others. Okay.
On men, nice parameters. The man's obligation is $20. There's like $20 from my side.
Yeah.
That's taking the combined income off.
The combined income, it's all his. It's all his income, according to the first opinion. It's all his income, and therefore he tithes it. Yeah.
So anything that was excess of the house requirements, did it not say that then she had the ability to buy that herself?
No. Oh, that's only when she's the exclusive earner. But if she's not the exclusive earner, then anything that she acquires goes to her husband. The issue that the Rav here was dealing with is what is the status of income that she acquires that's not domestic work. It's not domestic based. This is a machlokas also. Some poskim say that any money that she earns through work is considered maaseh yadeha, where the Gemara says it goes immediately to the husband. There's another opinion that says that it doesn't have the status of maaseh yadeha, but rather is of a different category. You would call it, let's say, work that she or income that she acquires that is above and beyond the regular maaseh yadeha. It either qualifies as things that the Gemara talks about when a woman works overtime and is able to accumulate a surplus, or a mitzia. She finds a lost item that's a very valuable item. So in both of those cases, however, the most that you could possibly say is that it has a din of nichse milug, which is that it's still her property, but the husband controls that property. So even according to that opinion, she could not independently tithe that money without her husband's input. Okay, all good. All right. So let's look now at the next shuva, next chapter. The inyan lilchot sheyitnu yoter miyacholtam, placing pressure on a donor to give more than they're able to give. Okay, so here's the shaila. Bashuchuna, it's very funny. There are certain, even within our own community, there are certain cultures which basically the attitude is, I don't take no for an answer. And I mean that very seriously. Like sometimes we've encountered this, even within, let's say, how we want to use our building and how we want to allow other people to use our facilities. We tell some people, this is what we can give you. This is what we're not able to give you. And then the next thing we know, the person is saying, I'd like to use more than that. And yeah. So are they telling? First of all, are they telling the truth? Then so you have to verify that from your own records. But So why don't we take a look at the She'ila and let's see. B'shechuna hechlitu la'aroch magbit l'tzorach kupat tzedakah shel hashchuna. So a certain community has decided that they're going to take up a collection for the community kupa, for the community fund. Ve'ataha gaboim shoalim ha'im mutar lahem lilchotz al toshavei hashchuna. The gaboim are asking a shaila as follows. Are they allowed to pressure the residents of the neighborhood? Kasher yadua lahem sheyesh b'shchuna anashim sheparnasasam hi bedochak. Can we put pressure on people who we know are living just, living under a lot of pressure financially? The kashal adas mamatzavo shel kol echad ve'echad. And it's difficult to know what everyone's financial status is. So are we allowed to shake people down is essentially what the question is. Like, how far are we allowed to go to tell people, now, come on, everyone's giving this amount. You got to give this amount, right? What is the threshold of pressure that can be applied? So the tshuva is, Ein hagabai rashai lilchotz ela al misha muchzak sheyesh lo ve'eno rotzeh latet. A gabai tzedakah is only allowed to pressure someone to give tzedakah if it is assumed, and it's a reasonable assumption, we call a chazaka, that this person has money and is just being stingy, just doesn't want to give. In other words, you went on a cruise last year and you're telling me that you can't afford membership. That's what that's your story. Come on. And then we can, so that kind of person, we can put pressure on. You took your whole family to Eretz Yisrael for Pesach, and you're telling me you can't afford tuition. That's the kind of person that we can shake down. Okay? Al sha'arat tzibor asr lilchotz, but you cannot put pressure on other members of the community. Now, what does that mean to put pressure? What about asking them for their financial information? Gam ish asher yesh lagabai safek lagabav asur lagabai lilchotz alav. And even if you're not sure, you have to err on the side of caution, and you're not allowed to pressure someone that you don't know what his financial situation is. There are a million scenarios, but if a guy has a very expensive car, and he could easily sell the car, and there have to be at some point, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, right? But the gabbai, that doesn't mean the gabbai can't even ask him. The gabbai can say, listen, this is what everyone is giving. It would be nice if we could get the same from you. That's not putting pressure on somebody. You're not shaking him down. We haven't really defined what pressure is yet. So I would want to see some case history here. Ish asher yadua legabai, shehu nosein l'mayla miyacholto, mipnei nedivus leiv yasera. But let's say the gabbai runs into a fellow who gives more than he can afford. Ever run into those guys? Oh, mipnei habusha, or because he's just embarrassed, and he ends up really giving more than he can afford. I think there are those people. There really are. So ish kazeh asur legabai afilu litvo mimenu b'li lilchotz alav. Then if you know a guy like that, and you know he's living in abject poverty, but he refuses, he's too proud to admit it, and therefore will give up his last dollar for the community fund instead of getting his kids a pair of shoes, so then you're not even allowed to ask him, even without pressure. Amnam b'di'eved ein hagabai tzarich lahachzir ma shegava shelo al pi ahalachos hanal. But b'di'eved, if the gabbai did receive a gift from such a person, you don't have to give it back to him. Gabai's allowed to hold on to it. Even if you know he should not have given you that last dollar. Yeah. Sorry. And he's also saying that if you b'diavad, if you did put pressure on someone, and through that pressure he ended up giving you, you don't b'diavad, you don't have to return it, right? And in all cases where we've delineated the halacha, you're not allowed to sort of put pressure in certain situations. You're not even allowed to ask in certain situations. But b'diavad, in all of the aforementioned, if you already collected it, you don't have to give it back. Go ahead, Ron.
That's a fundraising time for them, and then they auction off things, and then the people are sometimes in situations where there's auctions going back and forth with people and pressuring them, come on, push it up higher. I don't know if you ever know about that, but it happens.
Yeah.
That you can do.
But I don't.
But there is like pressure on people who are,
Is there pressure? I don't know. Do you really call that pressure? I mean, people engage in the game. You can always walk out of the shul and say, "I'm out." No one, no one's forcing you to bid. It's I think it's done in fun. It's almost like it's a form of entertainment to engage in those kinds of bidding situations. Yeah. Now, so let's take a look. Oh, we're out of time. We'll deal with this in Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow. All right. Have a great